Welcome back to the channel. In this episode, we're going to be talking about The Fires of Paratime by L.E. Modesitt Jr. Book 1 in the Timegod series. Before we get into that, though, again, I just ask that you please like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you know when new videos are coming on out. Leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you, whether it's a suggestion of something that you want me to read and review, or whatever. Just leave that down below. Also, spread the word. It's free for you, and it helps me out, and I appreciate it. It means a lot. I appreciate your support. So, going into The Fires of Paratime, this is the first L.E. Modesitt Jr. book I've read. And I've also heard that it's one of his first books, and it's very loosely based on Norse mythology. The main character is Loki. His grandfather is Ragnarok. There's a guy named Odin Thor in here, so it's very much based off of Norse mythology. Now, you don't need to know Norse mythology to understand the book. This doesn't really go into, what the gods were in this order or anything like that. You don't need to know that. But what it comes down to is you have Loki, the main character, who, for as long as he can remember, he wanted to join the guard. That is like his thing. He would be the first person in his family since his grandfather Ragnarok to be in the guard. His parents weren't in the guard. He finds out later they never took the test. They didn't want to take the test. He's heard stories his whole life about the guard and the things that they did here, and the society, the things that they've stolen from here. It's as query is the planet that they are on, and basically it's a world of that relies on stolen stuff that's been taken from other planets. They don't make they don't make anything of their own, really. They just kind of repair what they have. But they steal technology and bring it back home and use it. They duplicate it then. And even the duplicator that they have was stolen. So, and you might be wondering, well, how? And here's the thing. It's all in Paratime. There's a lot of time and place shifting going on. And this is how he hears the stories of, the guard taking stuff from here and building up this society over here and destroying this society over here with basically a planet bomber, because they were a threat. And it begins with him taking his test. Freda is the council at the time who is going to be the one administering his test. And he passes with ease. I mean, this was nothing to him. So he's all excited. He goes home and he tells his parents, hey, I passed the test. I'm going to be in the guard. And his parents are just like, yeah, congratulations. Not overly enthused, not overly excited for him. And he can't understand why. You guys have told these stories to me for my whole life, and now here I am going to the guard, and you're acting like it's really nothing. So later on, he's sitting in his room or whatever it is, and his father comes up and talks to him and says, yes, we told you stories, but you didn't understand those stories that we told you. They were not meant to give you this great notion of what the guard is. It wasn't meant. They weren't meant to make you hellbound, hell bent on joining the Guard. They were meant to basically dissuade you from joining the Guard. That was what these stories were for. If you listened and you actually took what we told you, you know, what kind of system uses planet bombers on another planet when that planet poses no threat to our own? So Loki starts to get mad here, and basically he's just like, he bides his time until they come and get him to go and train. Now there's 10 people that he's going to be training with, and usually they don't all last. And Loki does. There's this test that comes up, and everybody. Well, first off, there's a first test where they have to like go from flag to flag to flag, and everybody's basically like falling off at like when they shift by the point they hit flag 2 or flag 3, they're falling off. Loki gets through this thing, the whole thing, super fast, and the instructor is not all that happy, Balder, and Balder will play a role in this again throughout the story. So he comes up with another test for him. Call it like an obstacle course, basically. He has to go through and navigate these 10 flags in undertime and then break out on the flag. And he has to be precise because there's like dangers here. And the instructor even tells him, if you don't think you can do it, then get out, because this isn't the easiest thing. And Loki is just like kind of like, yeah, right, whatever, let's do this. And he does the first few, and those are easy. And then they start to get harder. And he begins to wonder, was this designed specifically for me? Was it designed for me, or is everybody else doing it too? And he says, really, in the end, it doesn't matter. I'm going to finish this thing anyway. And he basically just keeps grinding until he gets to the end of the course. So you could see that he's got the ability to dive, as that's what they call it, time diving. And what happens is he starts to get the big missions. At first, the first mission really is more like hauling stuff, but his first big mission is going with Baldur to this planet like a million years back, and they're to get this like generator, and his job basically is to haul it back through undertime. Baldur can't do that, so that's why Loki goes. So Loki gets a number of these missions, and he's basically successful in all of them. And then all of a sudden they say, you know what, we want you in the maintenance department with Baldur, but we want you over here in this department. And Loki can't figure this out. He's like, wait. He's like, I'm like one of the top divers that you have. You're putting me now in maintenance, which means now I'm not even on like the emergency divers list anymore. So I'm not going to be diving at all. And he can't figure this out. And as he goes through, he starts to make some enemies because of his abilities. He learns maintenance. He learns technology, which benefits him in the long run of the story. But he's just trying to figure out what's going on, with this system. That it's just something isn't quite right here. And, the thing that I really liked about the book was every chapter had something going on. Something big, something major was going on. There wasn't a whole lot of downtime here. But at the end of it all, basically, Loki says, okay, I gotta take down who I think is my arch enemy, a guy named Heimdall. Heimdall has sent him on missions that nobody should have been able to finish, that nobody should have been successful on. Loki should be dead by the end of these missions. But he's not. He comes back and says, okay, what's next? And finally he's like, you know what? I'm going to do a series of things that they can't undo. And the goal is going to be to take out Heimdall, because he's trying to become the next head of the government. So he comes to Earth, or as they call it, Terra, and he has the locator chip in his shoulder removed by this doctor who, I guess he knows what he's doing, but, and he has this equipment in his house. So again, this is where knowing the technology helps. He has a regenerator, so his shoulder is able to regenerate. He's created all these different chips, these different locator chips with his signature, and he's spreading them all through different parts of the galaxy, all through different worlds. And, he's very wary of who he trusts, because, people have been entering his code and making reports on the people that work under him in maintenance. Baldur disappears, doesn't say where he's going, what he's going to be doing, which is not like him. And they can't track him. They can't locate him. So that gets Loki a little kind of, and on top of that, then now people are starting to write reports about the people who work under me using my code when it's not me. And he doesn't know who it is. He uses snoopers and still can't really figure out who is doing this. So he starts to now, his plan is, he finds that he's found guilty of a few things. And he spends a turn on Hell, which is like a planet. It's not like, the hell that we know, but it's called Hell. And they almost kill him on there, and he gets brought back. So he's really like the only one that really survives Hell and comes back. And now he's really against Heimdall. And as the story progresses, and he has, he's not trusting the system anymore. Maybe his parents were right, that this is a system, this is a guard that is not as good as I thought it was, that it's not as glorious as I thought it was. And, the thing of it becomes is where he decides to go and destroy planets, but then rebuild the civilization back up. And what he does is he has like these tablets that he leaves, and it's like a scripture. So he becomes known as like the god of fire, who can shoot lightning bolts, and he doesn't need, the bracers to do it now. He has the ability, the power to do it. And he becomes known as, throughout these different cultures and planets, as the god of fire, god of destruction. So he does all this, and then he comes back to Query and says, okay, it's time to settle matters here. And he ends up in the Tribune's room, the Tribune's spaces, as they call it. And one Tribune asks him a question. Heimdall doesn't even ask a question. He just throws a fireball, a thunderbolt at him, which does nothing. It hits off his, like, shield. And Loki's just like, okay, now I know here, Freda, who is the head Tribune, she basically slides out. She's not going to take this battle on. No way. And he kills one Tribune and basically takes Heimdall down in a hot instant. It ends basically with him talking to Freda about now this new time is coming in. You cannot change who you have become because this is what you've made yourself. You've made yourself in as a god. So now this is a role that no matter what time brings, you're going to have to do. You're going to have to follow this role. And it's going to be interesting to see where book 2, which is the last book of the series, where that goes. But this is my first L.E. Modesitt Jr. book, and I got a lot by him. And I am hoping that between the sci-fi and the fantasy that they read like this. It was a 216-page book, not long, but it read good. The pacing was good. And there's a lot of, just a lot of stuff going on. A lot of missions. So, there's a lot of stuff I'm leaving out here. Because there's just so much going on. I personally give it 5 stars. I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. I really liked it. I'm looking forward to book 2. I'm looking forward to reading more of his stuff. I would highly recommend this book. I think it's a solid story, a solid book. And again, you don't need to know Norse mythology to be able to read it. It's just kind of based on that, using the character names. But Loki kind of becomes godlike, even though he really isn't. He still is kind of immortal. These people live for, millions of years, unless they encounter an accident or, murder. So, yeah, 5 stars. I highly recommend it. So, again, with that, please like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you know when new videos are coming on out. Leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. And spread the word. I appreciate it. I appreciate your support. And as always, until next time, keep YouTube literate, and God bless.